She came to Caleb Rourke's ranch at sundown with blood on one sleeve, dust on her dress, and a silence that made a man reach for his rifle. He had seen plenty ride in from the west, drifters, thieves, widows, but this woman did not ask for money, supper, or protection. She only stood beside his corral fence, one hand tight on the gate, and said, "If you have a corner in the barn, I will be gone by morning." That was the first lie she told him, because no one with that much fear in her voice was leaving anything behind by morning. Her horse was half lame, her bonnet hung down her back by one ribbon, and a bruise darkened the bone beneath her cheek. Caleb looked past her toward the purple hills, where the last light was dying red, 3 buzzards circled too low. And that told him what her mouth would not. Someone had been following. Someone had been close. Caleb studied the trembling in her gloved fingers, then said, "Ma'am, trouble already found you. It just has not introduced itself to me yet." That was when the ranch went quiet, not evening quiet, but the kind of quiet before a rifle speaks. Her name was Eliza Mayfield, or that was the name she gave, and Caleb did not press her on it. He had learned during the war that names could be wounds. He led her horse to water, called for his young hand Tomas to fetch oats, then nodded toward the house. Eliza stiffened at once. "No, not the house. I meant the barn." Caleb kept walking. "Then you should not have come to a ranch owned by a poor host. My barn has rats. My guest room has a latch. And I am too tired to argue with a woman about which is safer. The guest room was meant for family." She whispered. Caleb paused at the porch. "My family is in the ground behind the cottonwoods. They will not mind if someone living uses the bed." But the room he opened was not just a room. It was a memory he had locked away. It had belonged to his younger sister Ruth before fever took her to winters past. The blue and white quilt was still folded smooth, the curtains clean, the wash basin polished, the little cedar chest still smelling faintly of lavender. Caleb had not slept in that part of the house since the burial. Eliza stepped inside as if entering a church. "I cannot take this," she said. "You are not taking it," Caleb answered. "You are borrowing it from the dead. And they were better Christians than I am." She turned away, but not before he saw tears gather and refuse to fall. Then Tomas called from the porch, "Low and sharp, boss, riders on the south ridge." Caleb shut the bedroom door with one hand and reached for the rifle with the other. 3 riders came slow through the afterglow, black shapes pretending they had no reason to hurry. Caleb stepped onto the porch, Winchester casual in his hands. Tomas moved to the corner with a shotgun. The man in the middle tipped his hat. "Evening, we are looking for a woman. Might be lost. Might be confused." Caleb spat into the dust. "Women get confused around men who think they own roads." The rider smiled, but the smile did not become human. "Name is Silas Crow. I work for her husband." He said husband like a brand iron, like it was meant to leave a mark, and with one word, the whole night changed shape. Crow said Elisa had stolen property run from her marriage, struck a servant, maybe lost her mind. He said all of it loud enough for anyone hidden inside to hear. Caleb listened without moving, then asked, "You got a warrant?" Crow's horse shifted under him. Ain't no sheriff needed between husband and wife. Caleb lifted the rifle just enough for moonlight to slide along the barrel. "On my land, sheriff is the polite option." Crow looked past him to the lit guest room window. "You are making a mistake, rancher." Caleb smiled without warmth. "I've buried my mistakes proper, Mr. Crow. The ones still breathing have learned manners." Crow rode away before midnight, but his threat stayed behind like smoke in the curtains. Eliza did not sleep. Caleb knew because he sat in the kitchen with coffee, turning bitter, and heard her cross the floor above him again and again. Near dawn, she came downstairs wearing Ruth's shawl. "I should go," she said. "He will not stop." Caleb pushed coffee toward her. Men like that do not stop because a woman runs. They stop when the world stops letting them chase. She touched the cup, but did not drink. "My husband is Judge Nathaniel Vero," she said, and the name landed heavy. Vero owned the courthouse, half the bank, 2 newspapers. "He married me after my father's death," she said. "He wanted the mine deeds. When I found papers proving he had paid men to kill my father, He locked me in the west room. Yesterday I escaped with the papers, but I lost them near Devil's Wash by breakfast." Caleb understood that offering a bed had turned into choosing a side. Caleb had cattle to tend, debts to pay, and dead relatives enough without adding fresh graves. But years ago, he had watched soldiers burn a farmhouse because the owner fed men from the wrong army, and he still woke some nights with wet ash in his lungs. There are sins a man commits by pulling the trigger, and sins he commits by lowering his eyes. He saddled 2 horses after sunrise, left Tomas to watch the ranch, and rode with Elisa toward Devil's Wash. Caleb asked why she trusted him. She said, "I do not fully. But last night you gave me the room of someone you loved. A cruel man would have shown me the barn." The wash was a scar in the earth, and scars always remember what cut them. They found a strip of Eliza's torn sleeve on a cactus, then hoof marks near a dry creek bed, and finally a leather packet half buried under gravel. Caleb reached it first, but before his fingers closed around it, a rifle cracked from the ridge. The bullet struck stone beside his boot and burst into dust. Eliza dropped low. Caleb dragged her behind a boulder, and 3 men appeared above them. Crow among them. "I admire loyalty," he called, "but I wonder how much it weighs after the first bullet." Eliza stared at the packet lying 10 yards away in open sun. "If he gets that, my father's death becomes a rumor." Caleb looked at her, then at the ridge. Some rumors need a fool to carry them into court, he said, and before she could stop him, he ran. The next 10 seconds decided more than either of them had lived through in years. Dust kicked around Caleb's boots as bullets tore the wash. He dove, rolled, grabbed the packet, and felt fire slice across his shoulder. Not deep enough to kill, deep enough to remind him he was mortal. Eliza fired his spare revolver from behind the boulder. Not wild, not panicked, but steady. One shot cracking rock near Crow's hand, another dropping a rider's hat into the ravine. Caleb crawled back, shoved the packet into her hands, and they slipped down the old trail behind the ridge. Narrow enough to slow horses, hidden enough to swallow men. By sunset they reached his ranch again, but the yard was wrong. Too still, too empty, too clean of movement. Then Tomas stumbled from the barn with blood on his temple and said, "Boss, the judge is in your house." Judge Vero sat at Caleb's kitchen table like he had been invited. Black coat brushed, silver beard trimmed, cane resting across his knees. 2 deputies stood behind him, and Silas Crow leaned by the stove with a smile made of knives. Vero looked at Eliza first, not with anger, but disappointment, as if she were a book he had purchased and found poorly bound. "My dear, you have caused embarrassment." Eliza hid the packet beneath her shawl, but Caleb stepped in front of her. The judge smiled. "Rancher, you have assaulted lawful agents, concealed a fugitive wife, and interfered in matters above your station." Caleb's shoulder bled through his shirt. His hands hung empty, and for a heartbeat he seemed beaten. Then he laughed once, soft and tired, above my station. "That is rich coming from a man sitting in my dead sister's chair." Vero's smile faded. "Some men fear guns, some men fear truth, but the powerful fear witnesses most of all." What Vero did not know was that Tomas had not been alone when they beat him. Old Mrs. Bell, from the neighboring spread, had arrived with poultices, hidden in the smokehouse, then slipped away when the judge's men entered. By the time Vero finished threatening Caleb, riders were coming up the road half-town, Sheriff Dane in front, Mrs. Bell beside him in her mule wagon, Reverend Pike behind them holding his hat like he had come for a funeral but hoped to prevent one. Vero stood too quickly. "You have no authority here," Sheriff Dane answered. "Maybe not over you, Judge, but I got authority over murder papers if the lady has them." Eliza stepped forward, bruised, shaking, wearing a dead girl's shawl like borrowed courage. She laid the packet on the table and opened it. Letters, receipts, payment notes. One signed by Crow, one sealed by Vero himself. Crow went for his pistol and the dog moved first. Preacher came from beneath the table like judgment with teeth. Crow screamed. A deputy reached for his gun. Caleb struck him with the coffee pot. Sheriff Dane drew on the second man. And Eliza slapped Judge Vero so hard the sound seemed to clear every ghost from the house. No one spoke, not even the men outside. Vero held his cheek. Stunned less by pain than by the insult of consequence, Eliza's voice came low. I asked for mercy in my own home, and you gave me a locked room. I asked for truth, and you buried my father. I asked this man for a bed in a barn, and he gave me a door that closed against you. Do not ever call me dear again, Sheriff Dane took the judge's cane. Then his pistol, then his pride. In that order, by morning, the barn was empty, but the guest room was not. Caleb woke with his shoulder bound and sunlight spreading across the quilt. Eliza sat by the window watching the cottonwoods stir. For a while neither spoke, because some nights are too large to fold into words. The town would talk, the trial would come. The mine deeds would be restored, and men who had bowed to Judge Vero for 20 years would claim they had always suspected him. But none of that mattered in the room where Ruth's lavender still held to the cedar chest. Eliza rose when Caleb's eyes opened. I will leave when it is proper. I will not bring more trouble here. Caleb looked at her. Trouble came with riders and warrants. You came asking for a barn, she smiled small. Broken at the edges, but real. And you made up the guest room? He nodded, toward the window, where morning gold touched the corral fence. Reckon the dead get tired of rooms staying empty. She touched the blue quilt, and for the first time since arriving, she did not look toward the road. Some kindnesses do not save a life all at once. They simply give a weary soul one safe night. And sometimes one safe night is enough to change the whole frontier.